Transforming your life with hypnotherapy just got easier with your host, Julie from CoachingHypnosis.net.
Welcome back, dear listener, to Coaching Hypnosis. If you've been hanging out in my digital neighborhood for a while, you know we're usually highly positive people. We talk about unlocking your executive flow, erasing your physical stress triggers, and installing an unshakable seven-figure leadership identity. It's normally all sunshine, rainbow-flavored breakthroughs and clean corporate scaling. But today, we're taking a massive, highly sarcastic left turn into the absolute twilight zone of human gullibility. Welcome to day one of our special 30-day countdown, the world's worst, darkest hypnosis cases. Over the next month, we are doing a clinical post-mortem on what happens when the absolute power of the subconscious is turned into pitch black by weaponized weirdos. And let's bust a massive pop culture myth right out of the gate. The general public thinks a predatory hypnotist looks like a dramatic theatrical cartoon villain. You think it's a guy named Count Vladimir, wearing a velvet cape, swinging a gold pendulum in front of your face and saying, "Look into my eyes, you are getting sleepy, now give me your American Express card." But let's be completely real. If a man in a cape demands your bank routing number at a cocktail party, you don't fall into a trance. You call building security. The actual criminal mechanics of the mind are far more clinical, far more boring, and far more insidious. It's about systemic pacing, leading, and sleep depriving people until their critical thinking entirely melts down. It is the art of getting highly educated, supposedly brilliant professionals to willingly sign over their entire estate plans because a middle-aged woman in Texas convinced them it was the only way to clear their intergalactic past life Comcast bill. Today, we go back to Dallas, Texas in the late 1980s to unpack a woman named Terri Hoffman and her group, The Conscious Development of Body, Mind and Soul. This is a case that officially wrapped up with a federal bankruptcy fraud conviction in 1994, but left a trail of highly wealthy, dead bodies in its wake. Let's look at how the grift actually ran. Terri Hoffman didn't look like an international mastermind of psychological warfare. She looked like an unassuming suburban aunt who simply loved oversized linen shirts, turquoise jewelry, and crystal energy. She claimed she could help people manage corporate anxiety and dissolve negative karma through meditation. And who did she target? Not gullible teenagers. She targeted high-earning, high-achieving professionals, doctors, lawyers, top-tier psychologists, people who were completely fried by corporate burnout and desperately wanted a spiritual shortcut to peace. Hoffman would bring these exhausted executives into highly structured, repetitive late-night group meditation sessions, using standard hypnotic pacing, matching her breathing to their breathing, lowering her vocal register to an authoritative rumble, and running repetitive linguistic loops. She would drop them into deep somnambulistic trance states, but instead of installing an executive flow state, she installed a synthetic, high-ticket cosmic emergency. Once their critical gatekeepers were totally offline, Hoffman introduced a terrifying, entirely fabricated cosmology, a dark, invisible entity called the Black Mass was hunting them from a parallel dimension, and she was the only operator on Earth who could erect a psychic shield to save them. She forced them to isolate themselves from their families, claiming their spouses were toxic portals for alien entities, and then she deployed the financial architecture. Let's look at the actual code she ran on these poor souls. Stage 1, the burnout mirroring trap. Target high-earning, stressed-out executives by validating their secret fatigue and whispering exactly what their exhausted egos want to hear. Stage 2, the parallel dimension emergency. Introduce an invisible, terrifying enemy, the Black Mass, to shatter their logic, enforce total isolation, and keep them in constant physical fatigue. Stage 3, the estate plan rebranding. The unzipped subconscious accepts the only way to buy a spiritual shield from the alien attack is to rewrite your will, making the guru the sole beneficiary. Over a few short years, multiple members of Hoffman's inner circle did something absolutely jaw-dropping. They systematically marched into their lawyers' offices and rewrote their wills, naming Terri Hoffman as their sole heir to their multi-million-dollar fortunes. And, in the extraordinary stroke of pure coincidental timing, shortly after the ink dried on the paperwork, those members began dying in highly creative ways. In 1987, a wealthy follower named Sandra Cleaver died of a gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide, with her fortune moving instantly to Terri. A few years later, Jill Bounds, a prominent Dallas psychologist who ran Hoffman's recruitment loop, was found bludgeoned to death in her home. In total, at least 10 people closely tied to Hoffman died mysteriously or by suicide, leaving a mountain of cash directly in Terri's lap. Look at the absolute sarcastic and monumental absurdity of how the legal system handled this. The Dallas District Attorney spent 4 grueling years trying to secure a homicide indictment, but because Terri had used purely psychological weapons, and because the physical acts were either suicides or left completely cold by a total lack of physical evidence, prosecutors couldn't pin a single murder charge on her. The legal conclusion here is spectacular. The state essentially decided it is perfectly normal for 10 unrelated wealthy people to spontaneously drop dead the second they give their bank accounts to their meditation teacher. If you run a local steakhouse and 10 of your patrons drop dead in the parking lot with your dinner menu still clutched in their hands, the health department doesn't care if you claim they had bad celestial karma. They shut your restaurant down. But because her weapon was an unzipped subconscious mind, the feds finally had to catch her, of all things, bankruptcy, fraud, and conspiracy, sentencing her to 16 years in 1994. As a clinical hypnotist, this is where we have to stop laughing at the absurdity and analyse the actual cognitive levers of what occurred. How does a literal psychologist or a lawyer hand over their reality to a predator? It happens through a complete abuse of standard trance mechanics. 1. The validation echo. Cult leaders always start with intense mirroring. They echo your pain, validate your secret frustrations, and give you an overwhelming burst of artificial connection. They build a deep, uncritical rapport that makes your brain assume they're a safe harbour. 2. Fractionation and exhaustion. Hoffman kept her followers on a perpetual state of psychological fatigue through marathon late-night sessions. In clean clinical work, fractionation is just a technique where we bring you into a light trance, open your eyes, and drop you back in deeper to help your nervous system relax. But when you combine relentless fractionation with severe sleep deprivation, the brain's critical gatekeeper completely short-circuits. You lose the ability to differentiate between a real threat and a fictional space monster. 3. The identity rewrite. Once the logic gate is down, the manipulator installs a new operational narrative. Hoffman didn't just ask for money, she convinced their subconscious minds that their literal physical survival depended entirely on clearing their earthly bank accounts to achieve cosmic protection. Now, let's take a massive step back and look at how normal, ethical, completely sane clinical hypnotherapists actually operate on planet Earth, just so we're all calibrated. When you see a real professional like me, we don't whisper about parallel dimensions or ask you to hide from your family. First of all, we discuss our fees, terms and prices explicitly up front in broad daylight before any trance work happens. No surprise cosmic invoices later. Second, we explain the exact science of what's going to happen in the session so your conscious mind is completely informed. We will even record the session with your permission so you have a copy. And most importantly, when the session is done, We run through a grounding dehypnotization process to ensure that your brain is fully integrated, your critical thinking is sharp, and you are 100% alert enough to safely drive a car home. No space aliens, no suspicious estate plans, just clean, elite cognitive strategy. When we look at cases like Terri Hoffman, it is a visceral reminder of how easily our psychological boundaries can blur when we're carrying unhealed corporate burnout, high stress, and deep isolation. Predators and toxic grifters feed entirely on unresolved exhaustion. They feed on the pain you're trying to outrun, but you do not have to carry that weight anymore. And you certainly do not need to hand your logic or your assets over to a third-party script to find alignment. You will scale your life and your business much faster when you are fueled by clean, sovereign execution right here on solid ground. If you're ready to put the invisible baggage down, clear the cognitive noise, and lead your business with a sharp, independent mind, I invite you to book your free 40-minute clarity call. We will audit those stress triggers, clear out the outside pollution, and install a powerful, unshakable subconscious identity focused entirely on your true present authority. Remember, aligned subconscious plus healed history equals unshakable leadership. Thank you for listening. Align your mind, heal your past, grow your business. Mindfully yours, Julie.